everybody. This is Margaret Pinard, historical fiction and fantasy author. Welcome to my lair where apparently I need two lamps on, even though there's full natural light in that direction. I'm in the dark corner. Yes, so welcome here today. I'm going to be talking about Audiobook Month. So my last video was about CaribAthon and Pride, which are both happening in June, and reading recommendations for those events. And today I'm rounding it out with the third readathon event, which is audiobooks. And you can definitely combine all those. There's some threefers that would do really well. But yeah, we're going to focus on Audiobook Month. I've got several aspects of this. So if you are an audiobook fan, you're already in with me. We're good. If you are audiobook curious, I'm going to give my top 10 favorite audiobooks. I'm going to discuss what I love about audiobooks, what I don't love about audiobooks, and 5 of my favorite narrators that are in my top 10 books. And I actually work doing social media for AudioFile Magazine, which reviews audiobooks. And I've learned a few things because I've worked for them for a year now. So a few insider facts that are kind of fun, insider knowledge. I've also got a link to their narrator videos. And then maybe we'll talk about hopeful audiobooks I'll be reading and trying out in June, which is just around the corner. Crazy. But first, I just saw a whole crop of videos about historical fiction 2024. Why did nobody tell me? People are launching into TBRs for historical fiction. And I thought that was a May thing last year with Brittany and someone else. And I don't know what's happening. There's just a bunch of historical fiction videos without a leader. And I'm like, what is happening? Who do I have to talk to? I want to get in on this. So if you know anything about this, let me know down below. Otherwise, let's see. Yes, let's start with what I like. Anita's here, fresh off of Go Indie Now. Hey, Anita. I got your fun chicken secret anecdote when I dropped into the stream, which was fun. Okay, so audiobooks. I'm wearing the fashionable cans, I guess you would call them, the old school headphones. This is what I like to wear when I'm out walking, which is most often how I listen to my audiobooks. In the fall and winter, it's especially nice because it keeps my ears warm, which is where a lot of heat evaporates. So it's also outerwear. But you do have to be careful if you're an earrings wearer, because sometimes depending on the kind you wear, it can pinch right there and the metal can be poking you in the neck. So, logistical considerations are out there. Seek your own comfort. But yes, I like to listen to audiobooks when I go on walks. I don't drive a lot except when I go on road trips, which is a couple times a year. So often I'm walking, I'm thinking, and listening to a story or a nonfiction book is just the right amount of engagement until I run into a situation where I have to switch my focus. Yesterday, this actually happened because there was a woman with 2 small children crossing the street towards me, and one on a bicycle, below knee height for me, zoomed right by, and I was waiting for the other kid to pass and stepping off the sidewalk, and my mind had to engage with those things, so I had to skip back 15 seconds because I ignored the audiobook, which is funny. But you get to know a bit about how your attention span works, how your focus functions, and all that when you listen to audiobooks, which is kind of neat. So what I love about audiobooks, well, you can really detect emotion in narrator performance. And I love listening to this. I listen to mysteries. I listen to memoirs. I listen to nonfiction, which I guess this comes less into play. I listen to romance. Did I already say that? And historical fiction, all types of genres, really. And I like to hear the narrator's voice especially in dialogue or sometimes in interior monologue, just invested with emotion because it gives you another clue as to how to interpret the story. So, extra. That's like, in addition to reading the text, you get extra layers of enjoyment. I love listening to the accents. Oh my God. So you're going to hear about several of the narrators who can do awesome accents in my top 10 list. So that's an obvious plus. I like listening to it because it helps tune my ear and like get used to the accuracy of other people's accents. So when I am trying to write and I'm trying for a certain register, whether it's class or place, I can't really do time because I don't have that as a data bank. But with time and place, I like listening to things and being told where they're from helps me sort of approximate something that's in between or something that's a little right of this, or whatever. So that's like constantly honing the craft, which I love. And I just love people doing accents well, which is just fun. Love about audiobooks, differentiation. So at the magazine and a lot of reviews, what you will hear people mention is how narrators differentiate the voices for different characters, and that makes it easier to feel the flow of the story. Sometimes when you're reading a text and you lose track of who is speaking, uh, you have to go back and trace, like, wait, I can't tell which person said this. It's not immediately obvious by the voice or the content. And now I have to track because I have to assign it to someone, and it can get like a little complicated and weighted down that way. With audiobooks and with narrators who can differentiate their voices, so you know that this person always sounds like this, that person always sounds like that, you get a little bit more momentum built up because they can fling it back and forth with easily identifiable identities rather than um, what's it called? Something tags, said, joy, whatever. Narrator tags? Anyway, whatever those are called. So differentiation is helpful and add a layer of value. And then also timing. So if you've got a talented narrator, often they know that waiting a tiny microsecond before delivering a punchline will make it more satisfying, or varying the pace so it's like a cadence that you expect, and then bam with something different like a pause or a leap in note, whatever. People have a lot more of an instrument to play with voices, and so that just is again extra added value. And you can make this up in your head as you're reading along if you're the type of person who hears it in your head when you're reading by sight. But if you aren't, then that's like something completely new, which could be really cool for you. Yes. And now I'm going to go into the things that I don't like in narration, which Anita is foreshadowing here. Sometimes the voice that works on the page doesn't work in narration, she says. My narrator and I had that problem when recording my audiobook. Oh, was it a problem with not working in narration or not working for that narrator specifically? I would assume that someone would be able to embody the voice that you were envisioning on the page. Huh. Unless like an alien voice that like no one can do. Okay, so things that I don't love about audiobooks. We've got when the narrator is too breathy. That just like it gets under my fingernails. When I hear too many mispronunciations, and I don't mean different dialects pronouncing things differently. I mean, I've never heard anyone say something that way, and it's a proper noun, especially something like that. It means they didn't do their research. A few of those I'll let pass, but like you get more than three, and I'm kind of like, it bothers me. Voices that are too nasal, and of course, we're presenting allergy congestion today, so I hope that my narration of today's video is not getting on your nerves in that respect. Narrators that are too one note. So I've often seen in the less glowing reviews the lack of variation. So if your narration is trying for objectivity and ends up sounding like who is that famous actor? Ben Stein? Like, just like suddenly, not suddenly, constantly even, that can really sort of wear you out because you want natural inflection, interest, and like, that's, that's if they're leaving it out for a purpose, then the purpose better be good because I like it's boring otherwise, I think. Hey Jim, nice to see you. Boop that like button, even if it's hidden because of the new YouTube layout. We hate it. So Anita says, Captain Morrow and Blackthorn's tone was too similar when narrated. We had to work on making the voices more distinct. Oh, okay. So that's not so much a difference between what you were envisioning or and hearing and what was produced. It's just that like the voices were too similar. Gotcha. Blackthorn is now Welsh in the audiobook. Okay, so that's a great example of using an accent to differentiate and adding a layer of what would it be? Just like detail because you needed it for logistics, but you know, could be like extra. That's fun. That's a fun behind the scenes detail too. What else? So I did have a couple parentheses. I don't love about audiobooks when they are too slow, but you know what we can do with that now? On Libro.fm, we can speed up the narration, which I love. So I don't think I've ever gone beyond 1.3 speed. That's kind of like they're professionals. Like I don't want to ruin their work and make it unrecognizable. That's about all I can handle and still have it recognizable if they're really slow to start with. And some of the more recent ones, I've only gone 1.1 to just try to get a little extra time in the spaces. But yeah, that's a fun tool that you have. I think you can use it on Audible. I don't know, but I'm just here to advocate for Libro.fm. They're great. They help indies, and they don't try to conquer the world and zoom off to space with the loot. So we're here for Libro.fm. So that's the speed. One of the tricky things that's kind of an insider tip is I've noticed when I'm listening like 1.1, there's a difference in how some narrators record, or producers, I suppose, edit the spaces in between chapters or scenes, and sometimes they put like, I don't know, a third of a second before the end of a chapter and a third of a second after the beginning, so that you have a sort of a beat to realize, oh, we've gone to a new chapter. And I'm getting some of this detail from MK Williams' How to Do an Audiobook video, which was fantastic. So if you're curious about some of the tech details, MK Williams does a fantastic audiobook tutorial about this. But when I've been going through, it skips, or it's not long enough at the speed I'm listening, and so my mind doesn't realize it's a new chapter, and there's no other signifiers. There's no chapter 3. There's no date, whatever, sort of separating it. So it feels like it's a scene continuation, and I'm not given any other distinguishing time markers. And I'm like, oh, I guess 1.1 was still too fast to listen. So then my own choices come back to bite me in the ass, I suppose, which is fine. And the final sort of parentheses about audiobooks, it's a downer, is that you miss photos or graphs or like any sort of visual things that are present in the book, because you can't present those in your ears. So you do have to like go to the audiobook bonus content link and then find it on your browser or whatever, or in the app. And that's just an extra step that I'm sure a lot of people just forget about, or like, can't be bothered to do. I've done it several times, and there's like cool things to follow up with. So I do recommend you try the cool things and like keep that in mind. But yeah, the fact that it can't really be worked in is kind of a bummer. But sometimes they manage to. So there you go. So let me catch up with the chat. Ooh, we've got Reed Peterson, right? Hi, I haven't seen you before. They're saying, I find if I don't vibe with the narrator, it can help to speed them up to 1.2. Yeah, the speed is one of my pet peeves. Hey, Kappa, welcome. Example, the original Sabriel, Garth Nix audiobooks were superbly narrated by Tim Curry. The new narrator I can't stand. I sight read the new ones. I love Tim Curry. Yeah. Jim says I occasionally listen to audiobooks on YouTube, but not often. Yeah, I've never done that. Cat says also from the point of view of someone who has edited audiobooks. Ooh, and would love to do more. Is those micro breaks you mentioned. It irks me so much when people clip those out of their videos, podcasts, etc. I know Shannon does that. Shannon uses a program to nip them out automatically, so that all hers are like there's no spaces in talking unless it's between dialogue and stuff. It's hilarious. It helps her with the editing because she doesn't have dead space, but this is funny. This just makes me laugh. Yes, those run-on chapters, etc. annoy me to no end. Yeah. It's just, I think, really considering the reader's experience, which isn't really a factor in podcasts because you're not going from chapter to chapter and switching scenes or settings. You're just continuing to talk and you're trying to smush as much in. So I think that would bother me less, but I don't really listen to those except for Shannon's. So yeah, I love it. Great comment. Thank you. All right, so then let's go to my top 10. And in this list, I've got 8 fiction and 2 nonfiction. I don't know if that's representative of my listening, but it's representative of my favorites. So we'll go 4 and 1, 4 and 1. I think that's how I worked it out. Okay, and I've got overlays for these. Oh, okay, so Cat Paws saying she has migraine episodes, and when she can't move, can't open her eyes, she can listen to podcasts and audiobooks, either when she's not feeling well or when she's working. I can't listen to them when I'm working. No. I can barely listen to music when I'm working. It has to be a very specific kind of music. Your brain's tap dancing on different levels. Okay, let me go through first 5 here. So I guess we'll go in the order that I've written it down instead of the order of the overlays. So here's the first one. Whoa, that's a big old crow. Okay, Shiny. The Sign for Home by Blair Fell. Now this is an interesting case because I listened to this last year. It's by Blair Fell and it's narrated by Blair Fell because he's a professional narrator, I believe, kind of like the Travis Baldry situation. And what's really cool about this one is that it's about it's like 2 points of view. It's about a deafblind young man who is in a religious community and going for his education, and he's got a lot of things to sort out in his life, and switches with or alternates with the viewpoint of his translator, who is sort of 10 years later, sort of in the midpoint of his life, having made decisions and regretting them and trying to figure out how to do better in his life. And his eyes are opened by interacting with this young man. And there's a lot to love about this. The emotion, the accents, the not often represented populations for sure. And just like vocal tone is really specific and like fine-tuned. I really loved it, enjoyed it. You know, wanted to listen more and like made excuses to go out and walk to listen to it. So Sign for Home by Blair Fell. What have we got? We've got this one, The Foxwife by Yangtze Chu. And this is read by the author as well. I guess I'm seeing a theme in my first tranche here. This is historical fantasy using Chinese folklore about foxes and the sort of myths surrounding how they shapeshift and what their characteristics are, set in the early 20th century northern Chinese era of transition of governments and cultural changes, and then sort of surrounding a mystery of what happened to this person who is very important to our main character, the Foxwife. And I loved the like delicate layering of all these different elements. I love the mystery. So we hear from the Foxwife, but then we also realize there's an inspector and their tales like intertwine. in a very creative way. And I love like folklore woven into something as like hard, gritty as a murder mystery. And I love the historical setting. And the author, apparently, I just heard her in an interview talking about how she had other people that they were looking at for narrating, and she was like, but they can't do the Chinese pronunciation, and they're not saying this, and they're not going to get like how to talk about foxes. So then she just sent in hers and said, if you don't like it, that's fine, but I think like this would solve the problem. And they were like, sure, let's do that. So she got to narrate her own book. And she's not a professional narrator, so they were like, oh, okay, let's try it. And we're very impressed with what they heard. So I loved her in that interview and like really enjoyed listening to her voice. It's like light and playful and clever and witty and leaves enough space to like make things feel ambiguous and majestic. And I just delighted by The Foxwife, so recommend it on audio. To catch up, Pedersen writes, says, I narrate mine too. Try to. Yeah, I think we've got like self-narrators, authors in the chat. That's awesome. The next on my list is fiction number 3, which is going to be this. Where'd it go? Why is it not here? Why? I did all this yesterday. Okay, let's see. Did I not? Apparently I didn't upload it. Here we go. No Two Persons by Erica Bauermeister. And this, so before, the last two were narrated by their authors, but this one is narrated by a whole cast. And so I'm not going to say the whole cast. It was difficult to figure out who said which parts. So this is basically interrelated short stories. No Two Persons refers to no two persons read the same book, because we all bring our own experiences and viewpoints when we read a book. And so this plays with that in a really fun way, because it takes one book and it takes it from the writer to the editor to the agent to a reader to a mother to a school kid to all these different people who end up touching this book somehow. For one, it's not even reading the book, it's actually cutting it up and turning it into an art project, but that becomes like a meaningful process in their lives. So the author really, and you could see like the cutting up of the book in there, it's really neat. The author really wanted to illustrate how important books are and how they touch people's lives and link people in ways we don't know. And the people in the books mostly don't know how they're linked, but we do as the people behind the scenes, which was delightful. And I really wish I had a better handle on who did what parts, because they're all listed together, and I think there was one Instagram post where they were shown who was who, but at that point it had been a while and I didn't remember like the individual tales. But anyway, we have a lot of different people voicing their different experiences with the book, and that made it feel very personal, like we were hearing actual tales. Of course, it's fiction. And so because they were like interlocking short stories, it didn't feel like a full cast audio because everyone was not in the whole story. It felt like we were leaping from short story to short story, and each one was just like given its own arc. And then when you saw how they interrelated, you were like, oh, and you got this little like hit of dopamine, and you're like, ooh, oh my gosh, like gasp, and like all these really great moments. And so I think if I had read this in paper, I don't know how it would be different. I don't often read a book in more than one format. I feel like once I've read it once, like that's the experience for me. I don't know if that's the general rule. I think a lot of people on Booktube actually read from back and forth, like they read audio and then go to ebook and back and forth. And besides the logistical figuring out of how to do that, like syncing where you are, there's also it just feels a bit jarring going back and forth because one, you're creating the world, and one, it's half created for you by the vocal colorings of the narrators. So I don't tend to mix. But this is one of the few that I would probably read in print because the interlocking elements were so poignant, and I feel like I would probably still hear those voices, like ghost voices, coming back to me when I read them in print, which would be pretty cool. So yeah, great narration and wonderful, wonderful story. So yeah, there we go. Let's see. Oh, Shannon's here. We talked about Shannon's podcast, and now she'll have to go back. Listen. Oh, yay! Shannon got into her writing, lost track of time. No worries, friend. Oh, and also, I managed to write this morning after like some motivational speaking from JD Estrada last night on Instagram. So I was getting the plotting in last night. I sort of slept on it, dreamt about it, got up this morning and did some more like detail stuff, and then wrote, I don't know, like 230 words in the 20 minutes I had before this. So yay, progress. Little bit by little bit. We love it. So welcome. Yeah, we're 4 in, and my number 5, I'm going to have to choose oh no, Sign for Home, Foxwife, No Two Persons, number 4. So let me get number 4, which is going to be fiction. There we go. It is here. I did upload this one. Mrs. Plansky's Revenge by Spencer Quinn. And this is read by one of my favorite narrators, but I'm not going to say all 5 now, Petrea Burchard. So I follow her on Facebook now, and she's delightful. Spencer Quinn writes a series of books from the point of view of a dog, which is not my thing. But in this one, which may be the first of a series or may just be a standalone, it's a mystery thriller where a lady is cheated out of her life savings by a scammer calling with, that age-old plea of, I just need a loan to get out of jail, and I'm your nephew, grandma, and it's late at night and she's confused and whatever. She's in her 70s. And so, number 1, don't let that happen to your older family members. And number 2, in this book, the old lady gets her revenge, right? So she's like a Jewish grandmother in Florida and had some wealth, had done well, and her husband had passed away. So she was, being prudent with her investments and everything, had some, good money stocked away for her retirement and her father that she's still taking care of, I think. So that's where we are. She has this happen, and it's like a turning point, or like a switch goes off in her brain, and she's like, no, we're not taking this lying down. I can't. Some of it is like shame that you don't want to admit being wrong, which we can all relate to. And some of it is like, it's a novel, it's a mystery, we're going to have a caper, it's going to be great. So she finds out where the scammer is with like an FBI connection. She goes to this country, she tries to find them, she gets involved with like organized crime because of course there's like many different places doing these types of scams. And it has a great ending, and it's like excitement, caper, and all that stuff. And Petrea Burchard, she just has the perfect comic timing. So when you're listening to this, you get lulled into the, playing tennis at the retirement community, worried about the older family member, annoyed with the kids still hanging on and being whiners. And then you have the thing happen, the switch is thrown, and you're like, ooh, we're in for an exciting ride. And she really like enriches her narration with this. It's like, I'm not gonna take it. No, like stand up grandmother, and I love it. So Mrs. Plansky's Revenge. I don't think many people have read or listened to it, but I definitely highly recommend the audiobook version. That is number 4, and then number 5, which you just heard me talk about, so I won't talk about it at length as much, is the nonfiction Nowhere Exactly by M.G. Vasanji on identity and belonging. And so if you want to check out more information on this, I think it was only like 2 videos ago. I'll pop it up after in post, and you can see where I really connected with the identity and belonging piece of this book by a Canadian author who meditates on being born in East Africa, having ancestral ties to Northwest India, and then settling in Canada. And being a writer, where does that put his experience? How does that color his views? How does he consider himself as an artist? Where does he feel he belongs? And there's some politics and like sociology thrown in there with really like thought-provoking results. So love this. That's the first 5. And so now we'll take a wee break and visit in the chat again, make sure I haven't forgotten anything. Ooh, Revenge. What a title to bring in readers. It's so good. I mean, it's a little fairy tale, but like a lot of mysteries are fairy tale, because I think in a mystery, just like in a romance, you have to satisfy your reader's desire for a conclusion, and this one does. Like the revenge plot is A+. Shannon says, my current book I'm writing has revenge as the character motivation. So interesting to write that perspective and to read it. Yes, and I just finished a book this morning, Margaret Atwood's Payback. This is sideline tangent. Sorry, everybody. That talks about the revenge plot, not in Hamlet, but in The Merchant of Venice, which is highly interesting in her consideration of debt in history and folklore and society. It's like it's a very silly book, but it's also very poignant, to use one of my favorite words. Oh, love the earrings. Thank you. And talked about this last Sunday. Yes, such a good book, such a good audiobook. Okay, second half. So this is where I remember to say like, comment, share, subscribe. If you're new here, thank you so much for joining. I do lots of Booktube videos. I do lots of tags and readathon recommendations, and love talking about books, especially historical fiction and fantasy. So sign on for that if that's your bag. And if you have questions, pop them in the chat. Okay, so second half of the top 10. Let's see. Okay, yay. This one is a historical fantasy. So right in my bailiwick here. Mortal Follies by Alexis Hall, and this is narrated by Nneka Okoye. So this is a Regency romance with a revenge subplot that incorporates witches, gods and goddesses, Shakespearean fictional fae, all in a beautiful, hilarious way. So I will say the big draw in this is actually Nneka Okoye's humor. So she talks very fast. She's got lots of different accents to bring to the table, including a very puckish Puck as the narrator. So she's a fae who lives throughout the centuries and is very familiar with human foibles, and is not afraid to call things as she sees them. The narrator, she doesn't really matter. And so yeah, what you have is like the tiny Regency romance, which is sapphic because we've got a narrator describing a young woman who's not really satisfied with her marriage prospects, and an older woman who's like an outcast but has the money to like weather the storm. And they get involved because of this curse, and they find out where the curse is coming from and try to reverse it, and get more and more involved. And they end up like in a pool of sulfuric water underneath the whatever it's called, the water rooms at Bath, like where they drink the water, which is hilarious to me. So I love this. I love this for the characters. But we've got like the close-in view of the plot, and then we've got the zoomed-out view of like the mythology and the fae perspective on all that, which is just delightful. And the humor is like the top billing in this one for me. So I loved Mortal Follies, and my first Alexis Hall. So I know she's a very popular LGBTQ historical writer and a historical romance writer, and so this was my introduction, and like loved it, bang on. So, and it translated well to audiobook, so recommend. Wait, where, JC? Where did I? Here we go. Okay, Shannon says, is that Margaret Atwood book nonfiction? Yes, it is nonfiction. It's only 200 pages. It came out in 2008. I'll be talking about this on Wednesday in my Wednesday wrap-up. Anita says, many of my stories have revenge. I can well believe it. That's a very go-to choice for horror, I would say, as well as romance. Poetry, I don't know. Is revenge popular in poetry? Probably. I could see that. I could see that. Hi, JC. Happy Sunday. And Shannon says, I thought this might be romance by the 3-line headline. Yes, the 3-line headline, in case it's too small for everybody, says, one cursed debutante, one exiled witch, one wild deal. This is pretty good. This is pretty good. I didn't skip you. I hadn't gotten to there yet. Nice to see you, JC. Thank you. Let's see. And we're saying hello. And Shannon says, doing well this year compared to last year, being this close to the AWC. We have so many wonderful people this year that I feel like I can breathe. That's excellent. That's good to hear. Would love to read that Atwood book. Yeah, chance find for Independent Bookstore Day. I found this at a new bookstore that I went to. That was amazing. So it just pays to go out and find new indie bookstores. But you like to stay at home, so you'd have to I don't know, leave the bubble for a bit. Yes, JC, echoing all our thoughts. I'm glad that you're feeling like you can breathe, Shannon. You work so hard, but it is very appreciated. And JC says, I'm doing okay. Excellent. And we've got hearts for everybody. All the writers in the chat. Yeah, should leave bubble. Just to keep your hand in, you know. Okay, so back to the Audiobook Month readathon. Let's go back and see. That's our number 1 fiction, or number 6, should I say. Okay, we got some more romance coming up. If you know, you know. Grace Burrows, one of my go-to historical romance authors. This is the book that made me discover her. So Grace Burrows, and this is Never a Duke. So she's got several series. She's got, I don't know, upward of 50, 60 books out by now. And this is her historical romance series with a Duke in every title. And that's usually not my bag. But this is the last one, and it doesn't concern any of the people that are Dukes, actually. It concerns someone who is their lawyer finding love. And I was like, okay, I dig this. So this is, oh shoot. I didn't look these all up because I figured it would be on the covers, but it is not. This is narrated by, it's a guy whose name is, let's see, let's scroll back down. It isn't someone I had heard of before. James Langton. There we go. And he was delightful. So as a lawyer, he has a bit of a gravelly accent. Like he came up, he was sort of a protege from the lower orders, like kind of Oliver Twist-ish, if you will, with Fagin. But he was taken in hand by dukes and, for charitable reasons. And so now he's come up. He's very capable in the business world. He knows how to get things done. He also has contacts in the harbor baddies world. So he can hop from pool to pool. He, gets interested in this woman. He knows he shouldn't. And she's looking to him to save her from a certain situation. And they investigate. So it's a mystery and it's a romance and it's historical. It's my favorite combination. And I'm so happy that this one introduced me to Grace Burrows. So if I was to read this, I've considered reading this in a print version as well because I loved it so much and I want to read it again. Would I hear the ghost voices of James Langton? Maybe. So this might be worth going back to read in another format, but I really enjoyed the audio. So yeah, give romance audio a try if you haven't, and use this book as an example. Just saying. You can tell me if it works or if it doesn't. I will take responsibility for being the recommender. So that's number 7. Yeah, I know. Track record is not great for this. but it's so questionable outside the bubble. I know. Yeah, it's not a good record, I know. Yeah, there's the expose yourself to more things so you won't get as badly hit argument, but I don't know. I'm not a medical doctor. I can't say if that holds any water. Um, Sounds like my kind of book. Yes, for Never a Duke. I love it. Okay, yes, writing that down. It is such a good read. It's so life affirming for people without love in their lives. How about that? How about that? Okay, so Never a Duke. What else have I got? 7, 8, 9. Oh, here we go. Okay, so 8 is going to be one of the first books I recommended on Booktube. Did I upload this one? Apparently not. Let's see. Okay. I don't know why some of these didn't make it. It's like from Canva to the desktop to Streamyard. Some of these don't make it. Miss Austen by Jill Hornby. Now, I haven't read, I know Nick Hornby's a really famous author. I think this is one or maybe the second of Jill Hornby's books, so she's not as prolific as Nick Hornby. But she won my heart with this book about Cassandra Austen. So if you are a Jane Austen fan and you're already getting ready for Jane Austen July, like I am, you probably know that there have been lots of adaptations, and you can pick and choose. You can rate them highly or lowly. This adaptation is narrated by Juliet Stevenson, favorite actress, and she's an audiobook narrator for this book. That's how good it is. So the book is about Cassandra reflecting on her life after Jane has passed away, right? So Cassandra lives many years after her sister passes away, and she basically has to deal with like the fame of this famous author in the family, which is sort of shameful, but like also good. And they were very close, and so very hard for her. So we get flashbacks of like where they were both alive and talking. We get letters between them that are made up because a lot of them were burned by Cassandra Jane's request. And then we get like current life of Cassandra, which is when she's like older and reflecting on things and like might have beens or regrets. And it's funny because Juliet Stevenson knows how to do funny. She does accents from all around the country, which is intriguing because I think they're still in Hampshire at the end, like in the current timeline. But it seems like she's got a maid of all work that's from like Norfolk or something, or maybe Somerset. So I'm sort of being educated about English accents listening to Juliet Stevenson go off, which is amazing. So there's lots of like class humor and just sort of like family things that are funny that she does really well. And then there's also like the emotional drama of the flashback scenes and the poignancy of the sister reflecting on that life. And it's just beautiful and enjoyable. So again, little favorite. So sneak preview of the top 5 favorite narrators. And I don't know, a historical fiction that interprets real historical characters, which I know some people don't go in for. Brian, I'm talking to you. But like really thought-provoking and really plausible. And so if you're a fan of Maggie O'Farrell with like Hamnet, this is probably a look-alike, like something you might enjoy as well. And you can't go wrong with the narrator. So I would really recommend. 8. All right, 2 more. 1 fiction, 1 nonfiction. Okay, this one I read before Booktube, I believe. It is Dry by Neil Shusterman and Jared Shusterman. That's a father-son writing pair. And again, I don't know who narrated this one. Let's see. Let's see. Is Audible gonna tell me? Narrated by Neil Schusterman, Jared Schusterman, Jenny Barber, Michael Crouch, he's big, Noah Galvin, Kivlian de Montebello, and Candace Thaxton. Oh, okay. So the father and son might be like in an introduction or something. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 narrators. I don't remember there being multiple narrators. Interesting. Okay. So the reason this one is on my top 10 list is because it was such a page turner, right? I know Dry by Jane Harper may have its fans, and that's totally fine. I haven't read any Jane Harper. What I know about this one is it is a dystopian thriller set in the very believable Southern California of present day. And something happens in the water apportionment compact, that is the Colorado River Compact, which may not be the right name, but that's sort of what it's called. And the upstream people turn off the tap because they need water, and they just say, screw you, Arizona and California, like we're just going to turn off the pipeline. So there's no water in California. And what you see is like people hoarding, people looting, people turning against their neighbors, people being desperate, the National Guard being called out, like all kind of things that have happened, not about water, but about other things since the pandemic. And so it's like scarily accurate how the authors have portrayed human reaction to something like this and our inability to really survive productively, or like, what's the word I'm looking for? Composedly. No, we're gonna run around like chickens with our head cut off, and like it's a good lesson. It's a good lesson. So not only do we need to like get our natural resources under control and like shared out fairly, but also like know how to survive, feel a little bit more comfortable with the land. And I know Shannon's not okay with that. JC's probably not either. Like, I'm pretty excited to be learning about growing food on a farm the past couple weeks, and going back tomorrow for the 3rd time. So I don't know, feeling more grounded, knowing more about how to like grow food and that kind of thing. But anyway, this was a real page turner because it's people who are not in that situation and trying to get out of, like beach town, California, with all of its concrete canals, and no water, and desperation because you can't go very long without water and survive. And how do you cooperate? And like, oh man, I wasn't gasping in surprise at different events, but I was like, my heart was definitely pounding as I was listening to this. That's how thrillery it was. So if you're looking for that and aren't going to be scared by something that's very like possible now, I would definitely recommend Dry by the Schustermans. It's so good. And it's a good ending. The sort of like comeuppance police is there. Like you don't feel like you're cheated, or like the moral is there, I'll say. So good stuff. And then finally, my last recommendation, nonfiction, where did I go? Brand is, and you've heard me talk about this one before, this is my last year favorite, Black Ghost of Empire, The Long Death of Slavery and the Failure of Emancipation by Chris Manjapra. And I believe it's just read by the author, Chris Manjapra. He has roots in the Caribbean and Britain, and so he's got like authority to talk about some of these historical injustices and how they are still playing out. So I found a lot of history in this nonfiction audiobook that I did not know, and it sort of tripped me into exploring more about this, and a lot of research interests that I'm into now. So that's been fantastic. Discovering the sugar barons, especially how that relates to Glasgow wealth and like other cities in Britain, and wealth in generations, and like class politics, and just some really interesting social things, but also like how it started and key decision elements or moments, I guess, that have directed things one way or another for the different empires. so one of the cool things about this book is that he talks about the differences with the French Empire in the Caribbean, the Spanish Empire in the Caribbean, the British Empire, and then the American Empire choices. And yeah, we all went different paths, but like have different problems. So it's interesting considering it that way. So yeah, really recommend for history and injustice and like a different perspective about why we are where we are and how to frame some of these issues, which I really enjoyed and appreciated. So that's the top 10. Let's see. Wait, what? Yeah, Never Duke sounds like a good book to read. And Shannon says, I love you, Margaret. I know I'm not a Duke, but I could ask Starla to dress up. Wait, what? Starla? Oh, not a fan of the ground. I'm not a person who likes being in nature, so but I love looking at nature from my safe spot indoors. Nature is beautiful from the inside. Well, that's what humans have felt, I think. The security of being in a nice dry cave while looking out and ensuring that there are no predators on the horizon is what makes us feel the best. So yeah, I like nature, but not the thriller part of not having resources. That was the scary part, that how realistic it felt. Anita says, as someone who grew up in a rural area, nature will kill you. Yes. I mean, we could joke about the man and the bear, but yeah, I get it. Oh yeah, no, I need resources. Oh well. Oh, yep. Shanna says, I know nature can kill you, but as a child, that hadn't been in my mind. I grew up getting lost in the woods on purpose to avoid the people who would hurt me. Oh, well, yeah, I mean, juggling dangers there, that's sort of a hard choice. Yeah, and she says, to this day, nature is still a haven for me. Yeah, yeah, me too. JC says, which is ironic because I'm dying to get to some mountains somewhere. Yeah, mountains are nice. Mountains over beach, every time. And here's Dee Dee. Hey, Brown Girl Reading. Hey, hey, hey. Welcome. We're just finishing up here. I have just given my top 10 audiobooks and what I love and don't love about audiobooks. And there's two more little sections here, which I was going to highlight. So, 5 top narrators that are in that list. So we've got Yangtze Chu with The Fox Wife. We've got Petrea Burchard with Mrs. Plansky's Revenge. We've got Nika Okoye with Mortal Follies. We've got James Langton with Never a Duke. Ooh. And we've got Juliet Stevenson with Miss Austen. So if you're in a place where you see some of those narrators' names, give them a try and let me know if they pan out for you, or maybe it's just my ears. And then finally, because I work at the magazine, what insider facts can I share with you all about audiobooks? So in some of the interviews that I've read, which we'll be sharing for Audiobook Month, what's really funny is hearing the narrators go into the booth and talk about how their stomachs would growl and it would be audible on the recording. So they'd bring like a pillow to put over their stomachs to like mute the sound while they were recording. Not something you think of. And then you're like, oh, yeah. So that made me laugh. That was pretty funny. Pen names. So like, I don't know what you would call them. Mic names are pretty common in audiobook narrating. Yeah, I've seen a few come across the desk, and so if you're a fan of Austen Land, you know that there's a Captain East or whatever. There's actually a narrator who goes by Steve East or Shane West. And so one of them is historicals and one of them is his contemporaries. And I just thought that was hilarious that he's got an East and a West name to differentiate his brand, but it's very easy to tell it's the same person. And you're like, oh, he's like a spicy romance narrator. So yes, it was very easy to tell. I'll just say that. And then like last little fact that was fun. So I just drew a parallel. Let's see. So like in the case of Juliet Stevenson, big actress, famous, Broadway, Shakespeare, all these great accolades, right? And I feel like in the industry, sometimes audiobook narration is something that actors and actresses of the stage and screen kind of go, oh, well, this is like a sideline when you're not getting a lot of parts. In a similar way that some trad pub folks might say, well, indie pub is like for people who can't make it in the publishing world. And you're like, no, that's like 20-year-old thinking, you know? Things have changed, and there are definite legitimate reasons to choose this sideline rather than the main expectation of the industry. And so I just wanted to like flag this. A lot of the people who I've read the interviews of said, oh, I didn't think about audiobook narrating. I wasn't a listener until someone mentioned this or said they were trying out for this. And I thought, oh, I'll give it a try. And then they sort of stumbled into this area that they loved performing in. And, you know, you research, you train, you rehearse, you practice just like scenes. And so a lot of these narrators are classically trained actors and actresses putting their best work into audiobook narration. And so I really value that talent and experience. And, you know, just wanted to like draw the parallel with indie pub people who self-published titles. It doesn't mean that like we didn't make it. Sometimes it's a choice. Sometimes it's not, but sometimes it's a choice and it works out better for us. And so there you go. There's a reason for indie pub folks to like give audiobook narrators a try. So there we go. And then let me just find my link here. If you're curious about some of these narrators from the magazine that I work for, oh, that's the banner. Let me go back to comments. I've got a playlist link for you, which is some of the narrators talking about what it's like to narrate an audiobook. So if you're curious, you've got a few minutes, you can pick and choose on that playlist right there. And oh, see, so Dee Dee's bringing up Robin Miles, who is a fantastic narrator. The Book of Night Women is narrated by Robin Miles, and it's fantastic. She says, excellent. I feel like I've definitely heard more than one person recommend this book. Maybe not in audio form, but like the book. So it's good to hear that the audiobook is also awesome. And Jocelyn Carter is here. Hello, hello. Happy Sunday, my dear. And he just says, I just interviewed a narrator and he does both trad and indie. Yeah, so that's like a business choice, I think, like with who do you make connections with and how busy is your schedule and like what rates do you charge. So that's a whole other different sideline. I just meant in terms of outside perception, like there's sort of a kinship there that I thought we could exploit. And then the only other announcements I have are CaribAThon is happening in June, Pride is happening in June, Audiobook Month is happening in June. So, you know, listen up, see if you've got any of the ones that fit all three of those. That could be fun. And also in June is the AWC. So I'm going to drop the comment here about, the link here about first page critique. If you are a writer and you've got a piece of writing that you want to have critiqued by industry professionals, we have a first page critique panel as part of the AuthorTube Writing Conference. So you can use the Google form, submit a certain amount of work according to the guidelines, and you may be featured anonymously during the conference and get feedback free on your work. So check out that link, and I'd be happy to see you June 28th, 29th, and 30th. And let's see, Cat Paw says, if I come across a good narrator, I'm just as likely to search for what else they've narrated as what else the author of the book has written. Found many good ones that way. Yes. And Cat Paw was here earlier, so she's already heard me like kick the can for Libro.fm. I was surprised. Libro does a lot of like blog posts rounding up, you know, like groups of recommendations for whatever month, you know. And I was surprised. They had a lot of recommendations lists based on the author, but like one on the group of narrators. And I like highlighting the narrators, and I thought Libro would as well. So I hope they introduce more. That would be really neat. But yeah, you can always search via the individual name, although it's more time consuming. There's the link for first page critique, so I'd love to see people pop on there and explore if you haven't already. Then Shannon said Leslie is doing a sprint right now, so that is Books, Gers, and Purrs if you're into sprinting for productivity on a Sunday on this 3-day weekend. We've got a yeah for CaribAThon. Excellent. I think I have so I did start listening to the Zola, the one I chose. Didi gave me a recommendation for a vlog. So I started with Money by Émile Zola. So we'll see if I get around to this like French 19th century writers vlog, but I'm listening to that book. I'm also considering listening to The God of Good Looks by Brianne McIver, I believe, for CaribAthon. So that would be two reasons in one. But yeah, so we'll see. We'll see. It's very fun. Shannon's got Leslie's link in there for anyone. It's impromptu, but it's in the morning. Usually her impromptu ones are at night and they're called You Up. So I wonder what she's called this one. Shannon says we only have 9 submissions so far for first page critique. So you've got a great chance of getting into the lineup and getting free feedback if you are courageous enough to submit. So go ahead and take advantage. And that is it for today. I just like coming in under the wire here. I've got at least 4 books to wrap up, probably 5 by Wednesday. So I will see you again live on Wednesday. Have a great rest of the holiday weekend in America if you are participating. And if not, enjoy the rest of your Sunday wherever you are in the world. Happy reading. Bye, everybody.